Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues. With this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 5 of the anime series, Gangsta. And this was just all kinds of freaking badass. And a very interesting episode as well, because of the, the expositionary information we get. Building more on that foundation of what we found out about the past of Warwick and Nick, respectively. But, I mean, the majority of this episode is just a completely unfolding attack, a mano-a-mano battle between Nick and this little guy, Doug. We finally get the little guy's name in this episode and learn more about his affiliations. Apparently he was hired by the Corsicans or whatever, a younger faction of this particular group who wanted to make a name for themselves, got impetuous, and unfortunately Doug, being very much in the same vein, he's like going after Monroe. He wants Monroe's head because he was hired to take his head, to make just sort of an impact on the families of this district and everything. And of course Nick is going after him because of the loyalties he feels for Monroe and calling back on the past. Apparently Nick was considered a C3 in his childhood or whatever, and he was a tough contender going after a bunch of Monroe's guys after they basically bloodied Warwick for getting with one of his goons' ladies and everything. And there's some minced words between Monroe and Warwick to the effect that, Nick was only going after his, air quotes, contract holder, not his friend, and trying to get a jab into Warwick, who considers he and Nick friends, and it's just sort of business for Nick. And it's kind of, giving us an idea that maybe the friendship is a little one-sided in their relationship, where it's more Warwick's concern than it is Nicholas's. But of course that remains to be seen. As we get to know these characters through the course of the series, we'll see more of that hopefully, and be able to figure out whether Nick feels the same way or if he's just sort of he's off the rails in this episode. He's overdosed himself on the drug Celebra and everything. And, no matter what this little guy throws at him, at one point he does like a dodge and feint, throwing his jacket in, Nicholas's line of sight. And then he throws daggers at him, and the daggers, he's got a bunch of them that get lopped into him. And he's still moving. He's still moving like a freight train, and it doesn't even faze him. And Nicholas, as he's walking away at one point, he's like considering to himself, well, he was trying to go for the veins or whatever. He's trying to take me out, but he missed, or it wasn't effective. And that's because they're so well matched. They, they can't quite outdo each other. They're just going to be perpetually fighting until somebody stops them. And I thought it was really cool that you had characters like Delico and Yang of Monroe's troop. At least Yang actually calling forward, let's go help Nicholas at some point. But you have Delico, who is this sort of lower level Twilight in his own right, looking very ominous and, just concerned, and I don't know, he's mulling something over, and I'm wondering what exactly is going on in his brain processes about all of this, unless he's just considering the story that, Monroe is relating about the young Nick and Warwick, respectively, who he then later figures out, oh, that's who they were talking about. And I had to actually watch that sequence a couple of times before it registered, oh, okay, they're talking about Nick and Warwick when they were younger. It's just very intriguing that. And it's going to be equally intriguing, and hopefully we'll delve more into what exactly happened with Warwick's family, why they spirited away, why Warwick's family was slaughtered, who slaughtered them, and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully we will find out. But of course, adding insult to injury, because of who Doug is affiliated with, it's not just about who he was hired by, the Corsicans, but he's part of this Paul Klee Guild, a guild of Twilights. I guess they are Twilights for hire, or they're like, it's meant to be like a safe zone for them because of the 3 laws that were put into effect so many years ago. It's tried to make Twilights, after that slaughter. They were hunting down and slaughtering Twilights. And these laws were put into motion to make it so that they didn't have to live lives of slavery. They could have equal rights, or at least some amount of rights. And, it's called into question how much they're allowed, because they can't even, in Nicholas's case, he can't even walk out in the streets because people freak out and everything like that, just seeing those tags. So you have these 2 tags debuted in this episode, aside from Doug, that are part of this Paul Klee Guild. The leader of it, Gina, who the other Ginger calls Sir, kind of reminded me of the Peanuts in the Gang thing, you know, Peppermint Patty, and I think her friend was Marcy, called her sir all the time. She actually wore glasses, too. So do with that what you will. But of course, Gina is just a, you know, she reminds me of kind of like the boss from Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, but also like the voice. I don't know if I'm picking up correctly, but I think this is the voice of, you know, the sort of main Sybil system from Psycho-Pass. At least that's what it was reminding me of because of how the character is designed and how she looks, and that voice just, I don't know, almost nasal but very ominous. You can tell that she has prowess and power behind her visage by name alone, but also when you see her. I mean, Warwick is like, oh my God, she is so big. She's taller than me. I can't handle it. You know, and when she comes onto the scene because of Nick's being overdosed and because of, you know, basically Doug's going against the 3 laws and taking on this job without really thinking ahead and all that stuff, she pulls out this kind of like knockout darts or downers, whatever it is, and she's really sort of reveling in putting Doug in his place, but also rubbing it in Nick's face as well, you know. And she actually has this dialogue talking about, once again, we hear a reference to an air quotes Veronica. And I'm wondering if this was somebody that Nick was attached to in the past or something like that, who was also a tag. And she had a very tragic story unfold, I guess. She's no longer with us, I'm assuming. Or perhaps this is the chick in that brothel that we saw Nick going and visiting that's on her way out, on her last legs. If she's not gone already, she may be on the way out because of, you know, the exposure to this drug and the damage it does and all that kind of stuff. Being a tag, you know, and Nick being very sort of devil-may-care, you know, even Gina, as much as she wants to rub it in Nick's face, she's basically asking him, what are you thinking? Are you thinking? What's in your head? What's going on, man? You know, you shouldn't be doing this. And you have, again, like I say, the other characters, Monroe's people, Yang and stuff like that, being concerned. Even Doug, even in the midst of this battle that's unfolding with Nick and Doug, at one point he realizes Nick must be juicing. He must be overdosed. That's why he's not feeling pain. He just keeps coming at me. He is unstoppable, and he's wigging out. He's like, what the hell? You got to stop. Knock it off, you know. And that shows you just the level of how bad a decision Nick has made in this particular regard. And once everything is said and done, and, you know, basically Gina has had her say and gone on her way with Ginger, I guess, which Ginger, oh my God, the way she took, you know, Warwick's gun out of his hand before he even got it out of the holster, and the way they, you know, sort of scathingly refer to normals, people who don't have this, you know, power the Twilights do, that was pretty sweet. That was badass, in fact. But I mean, you basically have Warwick, you know, taking both Nick and Doug to go see, you know, Dr. Theo. They run into Nina, and there's this sequence where we're following up in sort of brief glimpses with Alex, who is learning sign language. She really wants to learn to communicate with Nick, and I think that is just freaking awesome. This idea of her, you know, accepting the scenario to a point, and it's kind of like, you know, she's hugging the idea of being a part of this troop, for better or worse, because she sees them as honorable men, and, you know, it's arguable whether that's the case all around, you know, the entire scenario. They are killing people and everything, and, you know, the handymen, the cleanup men, whatever. But she's looking out the window at one point, it's raining, and we see who very obviously looks to be Dr. Theo, sort of just hanging out in that little back alley where she used to make her, you know, back-breaking labor, and, she is still seeing haunting visions of that cat she killed back when we first met her, the guy who was lording over her, whose name escapes me. But she's seeing like these zombified, horrifying visions, and it's that impetus of, maybe I got to get out of here. Maybe I got to get out of here. And I'm wondering if Theo, because of course we see once Warwick has brought Doug and Nick to Theo's office, and Nina's the only one there. She was getting ready for bed or whatever it is. There is no Dr. Theo. When he calls back to the office, nobody's answering the phone. Alex is missing. What's going on? Did she get kidnapped? Which is unlikely. I think Theo probably took her somewhere to have a talk with her or something like that. Or maybe they are on their way to the office because Theo knew what was going on and didn't want Alex to find out from somebody else how potentially tragic the fight between Nick and Doug and knowing, you know, Gina and everything was going to be involved, how that all might play out. Maybe he wanted to keep that from Alex's awareness. I don't exactly know, but this episode was just the pitch of intensity and revelation, and it was a clever mixture of all of that. And it's insane. It's insane in that it's so freaking awesome. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 5 of Gangsta, if you've seen it, what you thought of all the revelations of the past of Nick and Warwick respectively, him being a lower grade Twilight in his youth, and I guess, you know, they can actually upgrade that or whatever. You know, we saw Gina when Ginger came to let her know what Doug was up to and that he was fighting Nick. She has like this documentation and says A5 on it. So I'm wondering, is AO actually the highest rank you can have? Is there an A5? Is that higher than AO? Somebody stronger, somebody more ominous? Was that referencing Gina? Is she an A5? You know, or is that somebody else that's going to come down along the line and pose a threat to Nick and Warwick? Remains to be seen, but I'd love to hear from you what your thoughts on this episode were. Like it, love it, hate it, anything goes in the comments below, as long as it isn't spoilery material based on the origin material. And so yeah, otherwise I hope this video finds you well. That'll be pretty much it for me on this, and I'll catch you later. Peace.